Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon, adab. Welcome to Habib Talks, a podcast series started by Habib University that aims to explore the crucial role of promoting art, education and culture in fostering sustainable development. Through engaging conversations and insightful anecdotes, this podcast aims to inspire listeners to actively contribute for the betterment of society by thinking about the preservation of these invaluable assets. Today we have Khalid Mahmood Sahab, the CEO and Managing Director of Getz Pharma Private Limited, the largest pharmaceutical company in Pakistan from amongst 600 pharmaceutical companies. Getz Pharma is the largest exporter of pharmaceutical products and is the largest taxpayer and largest employer from amongst all the pharma companies. Khalid Saab got his Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering from California State University, after which he also got a MBA in Marketing and Finance from Rutgers University in New Jersey. And after working in the US for about 10 years in leading positions in healthcare and the pharmaceutical industry, he returned to his homeland in Pakistan, after which he started in 1995 the company that we have before us, Getz Pharma. And he is also the recipient of the Tamgha Imtiaz precisely for his economic contributions to the landscape of Pakistan, Getz Pharma being the largest exporter of pharmaceutical goods. Khalid Saab, welcome and thank you for joining us in this episode of Habib Talks. So Khalid Saab, before we of course get into your role in the kind of the industrial and pharmaceutical landscape, I would like to talk a little bit about an aspect of your personality which I think is seldom seen amongst entrepreneurs in this country. And you have been the chairman of the board of trustees for an organization called Peace Niche, T2F, and you have been personally involved in promoting and preserving art, culture, performing arts, literature, be it the All Pakistan Music Conference or the literature festivals like Adab Festival. You've also always been very particular in making sure that you are promoting South Asian forms of art and culture. So can you tell us a little bit about why this particular interest and what shaped your inclination towards the South Asian art forms?
Thank you, Yusuf, for coming here and for talking to me. Much privileged to be talking on the platform of a premier institute such as Habib University, which has in a very short time made a lot of contributions to liberal arts, to even to music. So I'm very happy to be talking to you. To answer to your question, Yusuf, when I went to college in the US, I came across with a lot of nationalities, especially the Iranian students, the students from South America, students from the Arab countries. And one thing struck me very sharply, that these nationalities had a complete language of their own. They converse in their language. So I'm talking when I was there when I was 21 years old or 20 years old. They knew their literature, they knew their poets, they knew their music. Compared to that, the Pakistani students could not articulate. In Urdu, they had no idea, they never read their classics. And I looked at myself, and I was unfortunately or fortunately I went to a English speaking school, and I had did not even know our heroes, and so I started educating myself on my own because of the environment around me, and I tried to read a lot of Urdu classics, and I also realized that I do not know my own music. Of course, I knew the songs of the all the of the top of the charts at the time, or at least most of them. But I didn't have as much appreciation.
So you recognize the gaps in your own exposure, and that's you wanted to address that.
When I returned to Pakistan, when I started working here intensely, I realized a very dire need of or absence of actually critical thinking amongst our youth, and of course there are other turmoils going on in the society, as we all know. And I came to the conclusion that we lack a lot of education or knowledge of music, and we do not have education or enough schools or colleges or where we are taught music, we are taught performing arts, we are literature, comparative religions, comparative cultures. Therefore, we are going towards a bit towards isolation, and a lack of diversity. And I reached to the conclusion that, and I think it's, I'm not sure who said it, but I must have read it somewhere during my life. I don't know if it's Bertolt Brecht or somebody. A nation without music and performing arts or arts is like a body without a soul. And that convinced me that in my capacity I should do whatever I can to promote performing arts and music and awareness of literature, because literature does reflect social relationships within a society and around the world.
Correct.
And of course I have not done much, but whatever was possible within my capacity. What is required here, individual or corporate cannot replace what the state can do.
That is
जो
true.
रियासत है,
That is true.
चैरिटीज़ जो हैं वो रियासत की जगह नहीं ले सकती, मगर बहरहाल जो भी इंसान से हो सके उसको करना चाहिए.
और क्या खूबसूरत बात की आपने when you said that we are going into isolation. I think that's true. Education in of itself, if it does not include the performing arts, the literature, the necessary kind of aspects of culture, then we are isolating ourselves from the world. Yeah. And Khalid Sahab, you have been on the board of directors of Zindagi Trust, on the board of directors of Durbeen, which is a very new teacher training institute, and we have very few of those in Pakistan, little to none I would say. You've been on the board of directors and are for the Iqbal Ahmed Center for Education. You've always been an advocate of education. You've also been supporting schools in rural areas, in impoverished areas. In your opinion, what can be taken from Habib University's liberal arts model of education? Do you think that this really paves the way for greater critical thinking in the educational arena? What do you think are the needs for Pakistan right now?
We all know that in Pakistan, even the elite schools are and elite medical universities, engineering universities, IT universities, etc., sciences. They do not teach history, even history of Islam is not really taught.
And at least not in the way that challenges popular notions of Islam.
Yes, certainly it's a very sort of isolationist way of teaching, and there is no respect for diversity. And of course, when there is no diversity, nations do not flourish, societies do not flourish. They actually cherish in isolation. So I believe that citizens must do whatever they can do to promote, and those universities, those institutions, or those festivals, those books, those authors who are making our youth aware of another point of view, some critical thinking, some questioning in a very academic way, remaining within the realms of acceptability and respect for everybody, what is their point of view. So Habib University, to my knowledge, was the first university in Karachi which had a full-time dedicated faculty and education and curricula on liberal arts, besides, of course, in parallel with the sciences. Your own presence, where you are a scientist because you teach mathematics, as well as you head the music department at Habib University, and you that has created a full-time music department.
Well, and we're hoping that it does become a fully fledged music department one day. Right now we've got a Center for South Asian Music, and it's actually taken inspiration from people like you who have always been promoting the underserved arts, right, and much needed, right, the ones that can make us realize our own identities, as you were talking about when in your experiences in the US. That there was an identity crisis as well amongst the Pakistanis. Now, as a leader in the pharmaceutical industry, what strategies have you employed to drive innovation, and are there any specific advancements or trends that you find particularly exciting or promising?
The fact that we were the first WHO approved pharmaceutical company in Pakistan, and the fact that we were the first European sponsored PICS approval in manufacturing facility and quality control laboratory in Pakistan was proof, or could only happen if critical thinking is allowed, if empowerment is allowed, and it is practiced. In this factory, we reduced the hydrocarbons to by 3,000 tons per annum.
Fantastic.
Now, how do we do it? We do it by hundreds of other steps, but 4 major steps. First of all, we recycle 80% of the water that we produce. Number 2, we treat about 350 cubic meters of effluent treatment every single day. So whatever is released in the stormwater drains or the city drainage, wherever it exists, we are releasing clean water. Number 3, we have almost 10% of the power that we generate is through solar power, so non-fossil fuel power source. So we have about so far 750 kVA of solar power in our factory. And another very small but very important step, we have planted about 4,000 to 5,000 trees, shrubs, and plants of indigenous origin in our factory that consume very little water, because we have almost sometimes desert-like climate. So we have a lot of humidity, but we have very little rainfall in Karachi. So these trees are genetically such that they just absorb water from the humidity, and they require very little watering.
So while corporate expansion is necessary, investment in technologies, in cutting edge technologies is necessary for economic growth of a company and for a country, how can we ensure that those in powerful positions keep the necessary equilibrium, right? Keep the balance between rapid growth and sustainable development, especially in the light of the rapidly changing climate, right? The adverse effects of this rapid climate change that Pakistan and the world is experiencing.
This, Yusuf, is a very, very important point, and everybody in the world is talking about it. People like the Pope and people like Noam Chomsky, the two extremes in ideological colors. They have both pointed out that the threat to mankind is climate change. And this threat is not only in the United States, but this threat is all over to every country in the world. And Pakistan, as we know, is on the forefront of this damage and danger of being threatened by the climate change. The food security, the water, the climate, the extreme climates are all going to have a very, very intense damage to our country. So the importance of sustainable growth was first highlighted by a scientist at MIT called, his name was Jürgen Randers, and he wrote a earth-shattering book called Limits to Growth. This was the book which was picked up by some of his work, was picked up by Al Gore, and he made, of course, expanded on it, provided a lot of funds, and created the first movie on climate change, which was called The Inconvenient Truth. So yes, it is true that per capita carbon output of the Western nations is very high, and yes, they are major contributor to the ozone layer, disappearance of the ozone layer. However, we have to understand that we have to think globally but act locally. The deforestation in Pakistan has been going on at the highest rate on earth, I think. In 1947, we had about 40% of forest cover, and today we have only less than 2.5% left.
Oh my goodness.
The rest of the world is not carrying out the deforestation at such a large scale. Now, we all know that there are only two sources which in the nature which absorbs the hydrocarbons produced. One is the lakes and oceans, and the second is the forests. There's no other source. Let's focus on our own country and our own responsibility. So our own oceans are being polluted by the dumping of the effluent treatments at like no other country has, perhaps. In Karachi, we dump about 600 million gallons of raw, untreated effluent into our seas every single day. In Punjab, there are no effluent treatment plants to speak of, and even the factories do not treat their effluent. So I think that this is something that our governments and our own people should realize, that we are polluting and we are poisoning our future generations. The prevalence of cancer is increasing. So we as responsible citizens must do what we can, from treating effluents in our own factories to creating advocacies, persuade our local governments, our provincial governments, our federal governments to enforce this law, that effluent treatment by the cities, by the factories must be done.
I think that's very important, and you've really highlighted a very big problem. And given what you shared about the tree cover and how much we are putting into the oceans on a daily basis, it's staggering. I think very soon any fish will not be edible from our waters, it seems. And what has Getz Pharma done? What have you done in the capacity of the CEO and Managing Director of Getz Pharma to tackle this problem?
That's also a very good question. You know that a pharmaceutical factory basically processes chemicals. An active pharmaceutical ingredient, or the raw material from which we produce pharma, has a lot of chemicals. And it is I think very damaging for a pharmaceutical factory, or for a textile factory, or from other kinds of factories to be producing all this, let's say, liquid waste, liquid effluents, and not treat them. So from day one, when we set up our new plant, one of the first few investments that we made was an effluent treatment plant. When we built and started a new manufacturing facility, famously called the Stoller Project, and it went into commercial production in 2022, and it went into design phase in 2015. We decided, and we took the leap, and I must say that from our board, the support of our board, our shareholders, our management, it was a big step that they decided to invest in a company which would be LEED Platinum certified factory. LEED is leadership in engineering and design, and the certification is controlled by the US Green Building Council. So there are 4 steps to it: member, silver, gold, and platinum. And the US Green Building Council monitors it from the first day that you start building, and everything there has to meet the green building specifications. And one of that is that it has to have a complete effluent treatment plant. Yusuf, often people think that this is an expense to invest in technology, but it is an investment and not just an expense, because we were rewarded with a lot of recognition, and we are the largest exporter by far from this country to export, and we contributed to our foreign exchange earnings, which are very much needed in this country, because our per capita exports to population is one of the lowest in the world. So we really need to export, and exports can only come with critical thinking. Exports can only happen if companies reinvest in emerging technologies. It can only happen if there is empowerment and freedom for people to think and act.
In particular, Getz Pharma has really emphasized quality control. I mean, to be WHO certified is no ordinary achievement. This is indeed very, very inspiring. Thank you so much, Khalid Sahab, for joining us at Habib Talks, and it has been a wonderful journey from your experiences as a student to where you have been playing a pivotal role in promoting art, culture, education, and of course addressing the issues of climate change. Thank you so much. Thank you all for staying with us through this engaging conversation, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Habib Talks podcast series.